Hello and welcome to another edition of Good Morning Pattaya, Pattaya Channel's very own breakfast show. I'm your regular host, Nick Pendrell, and I'm joined with a couple of familiar faces to most of our audience. The most familiar one for the regular viewers will be my co-host, Mr. Dave Durham.
Good morning, Nick. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for
that familiar face. I thought you'd forgot me, but I mean, how can we forget this guy?
It's only been a day. And we have probably an equally as familiar face with us today in the form of Paul Strachan.
Yes, hello guys. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Paul.
How are you doing?
Great.
Glad you could see us on this side of...
Well, it's nice to be at this side of the camera,
Exactly.
and thanks for inviting me.
That's quite all right. So, TFI,
Yes.
please tell us, WTF is TFI?
Yeah, very good. Well, actually, you're pretty close. TFI is Thai Flying Initiative, although we do have a joke a name for it, which probably isn't televisable.
Let me guess.
We set this up just over a year ago, and it was kind of on the back of the Lighthouse, which was kind of coming to an end, and we were approached, myself and Matt O'Sullivan, and they wanted us to kind of keep Lighthouse going. We said, well, no. So we decided to, rather than create another networking event, which means you're working against other networking events, we thought, let's create something a bit different.
Right.
So we thought, well, what would we be doing back at home? So we would be going to themed nights and evenings for charity. So that was it. And we did our first night a year ago, well, coming up for a year ago, which was 80s music from the 80s. So it was just the DJ, and we got lots of sponsors. And we raised, I think it was 150,000 baht in the first night.
That's pretty good.
Pretty good. I mean, and also what you have to remember, I mean, we've spoken in the past, me and Paul, about the TFI Friday. I mean, there's a lot of work goes on in the background that people don't see, isn't there, Paul? I mean, you know, people get there on the night and it's a great night, but I mean, some of the background, the work that goes into it. Yeah,
there's a lot of work. I mean, a lot of it's just conceptualizing it and coming out with the different things. Although it does get easier.
Yeah.
And we've got one coming up, which we'll talk about in a moment, which is back at the Access Inn, which is where we held our first event. And the great thing is that's helped a venue like that. That's kind of put it on people's radar.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And it's great if you can get the cooperation of venues, because if they come in and say, oh, well, we want 50,000 to host it there, well, sorry, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
We'd rather just organise something else at someone's house or whatever, and just do it that way, and that way more money goes to charity. So we do get great support from venues, but also from the people who've sponsored us, including Dave Buckley at REM, and Dave and his various guys as the Booze Lounge helped us, and many other companies who've pitched in. And in the last year or last 11 months, actually, we've only held three events, I think 1, 2, 3, that were paid, people paid to come in. It's only 400 baht.
Yeah.
And the concept is they basically come along 7 o'clock, pay 400 baht, and we give them free drink for the 3 hours. So it's free beer, red or white wine, beer, or soft drinks. And we always, this is maybe the Scotsman in me, but we always seem to have an awful lot more alcohol than we anticipate. So if there's still lots of booze left at 10 o'clock, we put on another 3 hours. So people get really good value. Well, it is while stocks last. Although one of these days it's going to run out at 9 o'clock, I'm sure.
And what we have to remember, of course, I mean, Nick, is that, all this is for a cause. I mean, all the sponsors that get involved are pinnacle to the business at the end of the day and the night. I mean, like Paul said, if you've got somebody who wants 50 grand for a venue, it's a no-go, because
it's a charity.
At the end of the day, it's a charity event. I mean, some of the charities, or the charity that you support, Paul?
Well, it's a number, and I guess it's worth pointing out that what we do is we don't raise the money and then just give it to a charity. We try to facilitate specific needs. Some of those are with established organisations or foundations, and some are with private individuals. And there's a lot of people out there that need help. To give you an idea, someone who has what they call a copy leg, like a prosthetic leg or limb, they get an additional 500 baht a month from the government. So in terms of income or social support, they're getting under 1,000 baht a month.
Wow. It's terrible.
You know, and you've got to keep it real. So there are times where we'll just go buy food and rice for individuals who've been brought to our attention. We work with City Hall and the non-crew municipality. But we've done things like, one of the charming ones we did is we rebuilt a guy's motorbike and sidecar.
Oh, really?
And the idea was that he could then sell food from it.
Oh,
you know, it's that old, you know, give a man a fish. Teach him to fish. So he was able to look after his family. Now, that was only 6,000 or 7,000 baht it cost us. But, you know, we changed their lives, you know, and hopefully...
How do you choose? Because there must be so many deserving causes. It must be really hard to decide. He gets it, but she doesn't.
Well, the reality is that there are thousands, and we haven't done enough. But we give because when sponsors come on board, we had one event we did where we had a sole sponsor. So rather than having lots of individual sponsors at say 10,000 baht each, the sponsor took care of all the money, which I think was maybe 80 or 90,000 baht he gave us. The money raised from that, he said he wanted some of it to go to a doctor who looked after patients with HIV and AIDS. And, you know, that's a long story in itself, but basically there's lots of Thai people who the government system doesn't kick in until they're very ill. And this doctor says, well, let's get them before they get really ill and we can help them.
Makes sense.
And I said to him, similar to what you guys are saying, I said, well, you know, we need to do more because the money that we give him would give the antiretroviral drugs for 20 patients for 1 month. And I said, okay, how many patients you got? He said, 200. And I said, well, we need to do more. He said, no, everybody needs to do a little bit. And if everybody does a little bit, and, you know, there's lots of companies who do CSR work, then it can all be done. But finding the individual cases can be tricky. Actually, even trickier is making sure that we do it the right way. We rebuilt a guy's house, and we couldn't really call it a house, it was a tin shack, but he was squatting on land, and if we'd made it too good, then the landowner would have said, well, you can get off and I'm going to keep the house. So we just basically bought new metal panels, but the guy that we were dealing with, he said, okay, I'm going to go and get it, and you send the money to me. And we said, no, we'll come with you. So we went down and got the metal.
It must be an hard job, though, Paul, choosing. Where I mean, like we've just said, Nick. I mean, you know, there's literally thousands of cases out there in Pattaya, and of course, these guys, in their own way, are doing their thing for who they choose. And but at the end of the day, it must be a hard task to say, well, okay, we'll do that. We can't do that. We can do that. It's not a job that many people would like to do.
It is tricky, but I mean, we've been very fortunate. We've worked with the likes of the Jesters and the Pattaya Sports Club, so they'll bring things to us that are maybe, you know, might cost them 100,000, and we'll pitch in with some, and vice versa. In fact, we found a bunch of kids who had been taken off of the streets of Pattaya in the Sunni Plaza area, and they'd been abused. There's 40 kids, and they're now at this sort of safe haven. And so we chipped together and we bought them football nets and basketball nets. And then we realised they're running around in their socks. So we bought them training shoes, and we bought them football kits. And actually, coming up this weekend, we're taking them to the zoo.
Oh, nice.
So we've hired a big bus, you know, and the whole day costs us about 10,000 baht. And we just give them a little treat. It's not really a TFI event, but it's something that we're doing for a group that...
And you've got your 1 year anniversary coming up on
1 year,
the 8th?
8th of August. So, so it's 1 year on from when we started. We're back at Accessing. We actually only talked about this in the last few days, and so far we have CEA Logistics, who came on as a sponsor, Defence International Security Services, Mark Chilton from Mobile Advertising, VUVA, which is part of Mark Bond's empire, and also I'm very kind, got a great donation today from Dave, who's come on board with Oscars and Booze Lounge. And we have a great DJ for the night, so if you're interested...
I think he's... I
collared him.
He said over there, you are DJ, not you? I will ask you on camera. So yes is the answer, Paul.
Okay, don't cut that out.
Talk about being put in a corner. I know, it's my pleasure, mate. But I mean, even, you know, you say you've got these sponsors. I mean, what about, like, guys out there that are watching the programme now, and, you know, Nick, there's somebody sitting behind a desk or whatever, and think, oh, well, I'd like to chip in a few thousand baht or 5,000 baht. Of course, it's a good cause. I mean, you know, but at the end of the day, how can they sort of get involved if they wanted to get involved?
Yeah, well, people do come up to us in the pub or in restaurants and say, look, I've seen the work you're doing. Here's 1,000 baht. You know, maybe they're not in business. You know, maybe they're not looking for branding and all that kind of stuff. They just want to be able to help. And so sometimes they just give us money. I had a guy emailed me today. He's got office desks and chairs. And that's not going to really be a TFI thing, but it's, you know, using the connections that we have. And then it works the other way. I was a charity which is called the Hand to Hand Foundation, and she said to me, oh, you know, we've got a couple of wheelchairs that were donated. And then we were able to find people who needed them and then give them, you know, and there was no cost involved. It was just a bus ticket to send it up to the country. So that's the sort of the way that we work, you know. And it's all voluntary. And I should perhaps point out that TFI, we publish all our accounts online on our website and on our Facebook page. So, you know, if we hire a photographer and it costs 1,000 baht, it's in there as an expense. And sometimes people will say, oh, you know, that's using the company's money. It's not. If those photographs earn us money,
sure,
you know, that gives us branding, you know. And, you know, when we did the donation of the guy's motorbike, there was a shot of me holding one of his children up in the air because I bought them some sweets, because they don't know Daddy's got a new motorbike. They don't care about it. And I think we got 730 likes on that photograph.
Nice.
So it spreads the word, and people realise that, you know, we're doing it, and we're doing it for the right reasons, you know. So
you've used the word we a lot.
Yes.
And I presume it's not the royal we.
Yes, indeed.
I presume it's not just Paul Strachan.
Yes,
on his
well,
own.
no, and thank goodness it's not. No. One of your guests that you had before, Joe Cox from Defence International Security Services, who's a very dear friend. He is part of our team. We don't really have like a committee and a president.
Association.
So Joe brings, you know, he's done a lot of events in the UK, so he brings his wealth of knowledge. Matt was Sullivan from Open Advertising. He deals with all our tickets and our graphics and our posters. And again, of course, he's very good at event organisation. I have a history of doing organising arts festivals in Scotland, so I did all that sort of stuff as well as the media stuff here in Pattaya. And we have Rodney Charman, who's a well-connected guy, a photographer, a Rotarian. So he reaches out to a slightly different demographic, but he's always on hand with his camera to take a snap. And Earl Brown from the Pattaya Soul Club, who's on our team as well. And we also have Nick Lawrence, who has the Thai party hire shop, and Nick the Pizza. He's Nick the Pizza. Right. So he does things like, we put on a couple of gigs at Jameson's Irish Pub, which was free. Kids just came along. We put on a bouncy castle. We had Dr. Penguin, the children's entertainer, and it was just free, and 50% of the food came back to TFI.
Sorry, my mind started to tick when you said, you know, somebody donated desks and things like this. I mean, has TFI ever thought about something like, you know, just getting like a premises what they was donated and have sort of like a swap shop where people could donate what they had, and then somebody could come along and sort of change it to something you want, like a base.
That's a great idea.
Instead of giving the cash, you know, maybe, I mean, there's got to be hundreds of businesses out there that've got something laying about that they don't use. And if they can't give you the money, maybe they can donate something that may be useful. You know,
no, you're absolutely right, because there's lots of things, you know, you could put them to auction and you'll get 500 baht and you think, I won't bother.
But no, it's the uses factor. You know, it's use. What's not any use to them may be very useful to somebody else.
I mean,
it's just, you know, it's food for thought. But I mean, it's a great job that they do, Nick.
Oh, absolutely. We're getting a bit low on time.
Yeah,
so
sure.
Let's just, if you could tell us about the next event.
Yeah, next event, Friday the 8th of August at the Access Inn, which is on 3rd Road opposite Buffalo Bar. We haven't actually done the posters, everything. I would imagine it's going to start at 7 o'clock until 10 o'clock. The theme is back to the 80s.
Back to the 80s.
It'll be 400 baht. I think we'll probably do it the same as we did the last time. It'll be 500 on the door or 400 in advance. And
where will tickets be available?
They can get that via our Facebook page, which is facebook.com Fun Events Charity. Or
Fun
whatever
Events
it's gone now,
Charity.
Something like that. But anyway, TFI.
Right. Is there any website, or is it all Facebook?
There is a website. I'm going to have to look at my notes, though. I can't really remember. It's
Don't worry.
TFI.
We'll put it on screen for you.
It will come
It's on screen. Always forget that.
He never works good without a script, Nick.
After all these years.
Exactly. But how many people are you expecting at this event?
Well, I don't know. The first event, the guy told us a maximum of 120, and we had 237.
Wow.
So if we can get 150, 160, we'll be very
good job.
happy.
So,
Good job.
book early, everybody, if
Yes,
you want to
don't
make
forget
sure. So it sounds like a very worthwhile cause. Paul, thank you very much for coming. And
Thanks very much
seeing
for
us.
letting me
Thanks,
talk
Paul.
about it.
Good job.
All our viewers,
well
stay
done,
tuned for part 2.